And welcome to the MerkleCast. This is Noah Detweiler, and I am pleased to be joined today by my friend and colleague Dariusz Jakubowski. Did I say that anywhere close to correct? Dariusz.
Yeah, you did, Noah. Thanks so much for having me on the MerkleCast. This is going to be a
Glad
lot
to
of
hear it.
fun.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. How are you?
No, I'm okay, but hold on, because the crypto markets are down big time today. I think Bitcoin, which is maybe your favorite coin, certainly mine, down about $1,000 on the day. So are you sure you're okay?
Yeah, I mean, this is crypto. We're here for the vols. It's just kind of expected. I don't know. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm not too bothered about it. I mean, it hurts to see and it stings to see, but I can't let it ruin my day. You know what I mean?
I hear you. So let's start off with one of the most impressive things that you've been doing and that you've been writing about, which is your New Year's resolution. You've been writing weekly stories about your week of cryptocurrency, is what you call it. And you've been doing this for about 3 months now. So first of all, congratulations on sticking to a New Year's resolution for 3 months. I have trouble sticking to something for 3 weeks, man. That's pretty impressive in and of itself.
Well, thank you.
But as far as what you've actually been doing as part of your resolution, it's pretty straightforward. You're trying to talk to people about crypto on a weekly or even a daily basis. People outside of your your professional life with the Merkle. You're talking to your friends and other folks in the real world about crypto. And I know you're looking to spend crypto, and you're trying to learn something new about crypto as often as you can. Uh, so tell me, first of all, if I left anything out, and like, why are you doing this?
No, of course. That was a really good synopsis of what's going on here. I started this resolution, the 2018 Year of Cryptocurrency Challenge, just because I realized how guarded I had been almost with cryptocurrency in my daily life, especially when speaking to people who didn't really know all that much about it. I worried that I was going to come off as either pretentious or like know-it-all-y when I was trying to explain these things, or I was worried that potentially someone might not understand it, or there's also a lot of FUD just about cryptocurrency in general, and I was worried that there might be like, oh, Dariusz is into cryptocurrency. I wonder what kind of seedy stuff he's on on the internet. So I really took this on as a way to not only get over that for myself, but I realized that this is something that not a lot of people know a lot about, even though they're starting to hear about it more. So that's why I wanted to talk to people outside of the industry as much as I could, especially on a daily basis, to really help others, understand it a bit more. So that was one of the things. The second thing is I realized I'm not a dev. I don't have a dev background. I'm a hobbyist coder, but I realized that there were parts of cryptocurrency that, while I understood at an abstract level, I didn't understand on a more technical level. Or there were even abstract ideas which I knew about but wanted to understand on a much more intimate level, for lack of a better word. I wanted to know what was going on. So I decided that I wanted to try and really push myself to learn something new about cryptocurrency every week, in more depth than just, oh, this is interesting that this cryptocurrency uses this consensus protocol. Instead, I wanted to know how that protocol worked. And then finally, I really do believe that cryptocurrency is only valuable as a currency when we're using it. There's a lot to be said about holding and using it as a speculative vehicle, but really, if you look back at the Satoshi white paper, the title is an electronic or a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And so I'm really trying to bring myself back to how I had been using it when I first got into it, where it was for payments, it was for tipping people on the internet, these sort of things, because I had realized that I really did start to just kind of buy and hold it. And I wasn't getting as much joy out of that as I did when I was building my computer with by buying parts on Newegg with cryptocurrency, or really participating in a subreddit like Dogecoin or something like that, where I was actually spending it, giving it, and sending it around. And I also find that using it on a daily basis opens it up to other people who don't use it on a daily basis or don't know too much about it. And I'm a big believer in this idea of social debt, where you build relationships based off of interaction and reciprocity. So the ability to, or if I were to give someone a bit of cryptocurrency, even if they don't understand it too well yet, there's a social debt that occurs there, where they may feel that they owe me something now. And it's not coming from a selfish place. It's just trying to build that relationship. And even if they do, satisfy that social debt, then the onus is back on me. So it just reinforces this community building aspect, really, through cryptocurrency. And I find that truly fascinating. So that's really why I started doing it. And I think the longer that I do it, the easier it is. You said, congratulations on keeping it going for as long as I did, but it's honestly been getting easier and easier. I only ended up taking one break not writing about it. I was still doing it, but I didn't write 1 week about it. I had a couple of personal engagements and other things for work that unfortunately barred me from writing that week. But otherwise, yeah, it's the longer you do it, the easier it's been.
That's awesome. That was a big part of getting people excited and knowledgeable about cryptocurrency that we want as people who are in the crypto community, so to speak. We want people using this so that it becomes less of an investment, get-rich-quick scheme, and more of a way for people to actually transact and do business and live their lives. Because as I find, and as probably anyone involved with Bitcoin finds, a lot of people consider it a way to get rich, something to buy in order to sell for more dollars or whatever their fiat currency is. Whereas it's about so much more than that. And it's possible that in the future, some people, the Merkle actually just published an article on, I believe it was, I think it was the PayPal CEO believes that Bitcoin could be the one and only, or the biggest internet cryptocurrency. So anyway, to that end, is it important that we get people thinking about Bitcoin and crypto as something that you use rather than hold or invest?
Absolutely. And really that's where I do think the value in cryptocurrency lies. It is, independent money. Finally, there's no custodian over your money. That is an independent wealth that you have, and it is yours to do as you see fit with. And there's also the argument that could be made for where there's wider spread adoption, which would mostly come from transactions, really. Then the wider, or the more valuable the cryptocurrency itself would be. Especially considering, I think there's probably, I can't remember the exact article, so I'm not going to cite this all that well, but there's something like 23 million active Bitcoin wallets or something like that. And so that's an okay estimate for about how many users there are in the network. And more specifically, this article also got into the fact that about 3.5 homes in the United States would be considered as part of the cryptocurrency network of those who are using cryptocurrency and transacting with cryptocurrency. And that's pretty similar to what the adoption rate for the internet was in 1999. So, you see there's the potential for growth, I think, is still insane. Especially considering, 1999 internet versus today internet. And they're not completely, it's not a perfect analogy, I realize. But this is a disruptive technology that a lot of people have scoffed at, and it has refused to go away, much like how the internet was initially scoffed at. It was only for geeks and criminals, and now it's literally used in almost every aspect of our life. And And I could very much see the same happening with cryptocurrency.
Yeah, that would be great. It was actually Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, that made the comment the other day about crypto could be the one world internet currency. It was not the CEO of PayPal.
Gotcha.
He would never say that. But in any event, yeah, just today, I believe news was also up on the Merkle about how a substantial proportion of Korean millennials are buying into cryptocurrency, and we've heard similar, and actually not just being into it, they're investing their student loans, which, I mean, that's interesting that they're doing that. And you read similar reports about American college students that are investing, taking part of their surplus student loan amounts and putting that into currency. So clearly, the young people all over the world are know about currency and are getting into it. The question is, are they getting into it as an investment vehicle, or are they getting into it in the sense of using the crypto? And I hope it's the latter.
Same here, and that's not to say that I don't think that there isn't a valid argument for cryptocurrency being some sort of speculative tool. A lot of, I mean, there's forex trading just within fiat itself as well, so it's not necessarily like crypto can only be this. And that's kind of the beauty of crypto, in my opinion. It can be a lot of things, and that's what's so exciting. I think the reason why young people are so attracted to it is because, one, generally, younger people are more attracted to technology as it comes up. But two, a lot of these kids lived through or can still remember vividly how hard it was to get a job right after the financial crisis in 2008 through to 2010. Like, I know that I still have greatly seated fears, or deeply seated fears rather, about the economy and what job markets are going to look like in the future, just because I remember what that experience was like, exiting my undergrad and just having very few prospects for a job because of how the economy was looking. So I think that, there's this, and I mean, cryptocurrency was almost a direct response to that sort of irresponsible banking that led to that kind of crisis. So I think it's a very attractive thing for young people.
Wasn't there some sort of sentence that was encrypted into the Bitcoin blockchain by Satoshi Nakamoto that made reference to some bailout that was proposed or potentially happening in Europe? Do you know what I'm talking about? And
yeah,
clearly connected with the financial meltdown and the bailouts and everything that's was wrong and continues to be wrong with the world financial system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, let's stay on the topic of your resolution, because I thought it was pretty funny. In your latest edition, you referenced, I think you were at a birthday party and you brought up blockchain, and some guy says, "Well, everyone shut the hell up about blockchain." And he said the only cryptocurrency I would buy is if they made something called the monopoly money coin, because at least they'd be honest about that being worthless and a scam. So I want to know why, and I know that you talked to this guy for a while, which is more than I would have done after hearing that. But why did he think it was a scam? And there's a lot of people out there like him that they're just not going to accept that anything that's not paper money that they've used their whole lives is anything other than a scam. And why is that, do you think?
I think change is very scary for a lot of people. I'm sure there's changes that I'm scared of, to be frank. But this happens with every disruptive technology that has existed, just period, where there's an amount of time where this new idea is proposed. Everyone is scared of it. There are a few people who are early adopters and they benefit greatly from it. And then a slow acceptance of, oh yes, this was okay. A lot of people, I think, get very seated in their, very rooted in the idea that they are correct, and there's this new thing that they see, and they're not used to it, they don't understand it, and they don't want to have take the time to figure it out. And because of that, it's obviously a scam. So that's another reason why I do really enjoy trying to have these conversations, because I don't come from an accusatory place. I'm not saying this is what you should be doing or this is all wrong. It's about educating people, because at the end of the day, the more people know about it, the less scary it is. Let me give you an example. So I said that this has happened with every new technology, every new disruptive technology. And this is true of the television. This is true of radio broadcasts. This is true of the automotive industry. Locomotives were horrifying to a lot of people. Even alternating current versus direct current, both of these things are electricity, but you saw, I mean, there was FUD even then. You had Einstein like, zapping an elephant with AC to show how dangerous it was, to discredit Tesla. But it goes even as far back as the time of like Plato and Socrates, where we're in the written work Phaedrus. Plato and Socrates are in a debate about whether or not the written word is the end of humanity. And Socrates is trying to say that it is, because you no longer need to remember these things, or because you could just write it down. You're essentially extending yourself. But whereas I see technology as a good extension of ourselves, or rather an inevitable extension of ourselves. Good is probably the wrong word, because good and bad, I don't really necessarily believe that technology can be good or bad. But so these inevitable extensions of ourselves, they're not the end of humanity. They're just the latent capacity we had always to do these things. So I think that the reason why a lot of people are going to continue thinking it's a scam are for very similar reasons that people thought that written word was a scam, the internet was a scam, all of these really important things that now really define us in some way or another, at least in the Western world. And I think that give it 10 years, and I think everyone's probably going to be just as comfortable with blockchain technology as they are the internet now.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Change, and many of us assume change is bad and the status quo is good. Like, I'm sure if we were all born with crypto and Bitcoin and being our own banks and controlling our own finance with the internet of money, and then some companies came out of nowhere and said, "Hey, we're banks. We're going to take your money and we'll store it on something that's sort of like the blockchain, but it's private. But don't worry, you can trust us. We'll give you a little interest, and we'll take care of it." That people would be very quick to say that's bad and that's a scam, as they should.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So one other question I have before we move on from your resolution, because frankly, it's a sore subject. I'm jealous that you even have a resolution, man. I've tried and failed to come up with a good resolution. I probably should have done yours, but it's not too late. As you tell everyone in your articles, it's not too late to join you. And some people have posted their experiences, which has been awesome. But I want to know why you make a point to steer the conversation away when you start the conversations and someone starts talking about the price. You immediately talk about the technology. We've touched on this earlier, but what would you say is your ambivalence when it comes to the price and the markets, and why is that not so interesting for you?
So I recognize that the price and price action and markets are all very important things. And I also recognize that the price is what has driven a lot of interest in cryptocurrency. I just kind of, boring is the wrong word, because of course I have heart attacks every now and then when I look at the markets. But I just don't think it's nearly as interesting as, one, the technology that underpins all of this price action and this brave new world of cryptocurrency. But two, I think that the ethos and the philosophy behind what cryptos are is probably the most compelling argument for them. Whereas I think that price is the least compelling, particularly because the price can go up or down and no one can guess that. I mean, no one can time the market. And particularly in one as volatile as the cryptocurrency market, it is just, there's no use in trying. And I think because of that, it turns a lot of people off. A lot of people are there for the vols too, and that's fine. And there's opportunity where there's volatility. I get that. But again, at the same time, it's just, I think that that kind of price action is a far less compelling argument for the widespread adoption of cryptocurrency. Whereas I think telling someone and showing someone, not having to like have them trust you out, but showing them the code and saying, if you trust this, there it is. This is a meritocracy. It's not about trusting me. It's not about trusting, even the person who wrote the code. It's about, does this code work for you? And does it make your life better? And I think the argument is yes, because blockchain technology is so revolutionary in its ability to reconcile data and then secure data integrity and really give the users of it that power back that has been frankly taken from them by other institutions who would hold your money and be custodians of your money for you. And so that's why I think that the technology and the ethos behind it is a far more compelling reason than price. And that's why I try and steer the conversation toward technology and the philosophy behind it. Because I think if we're going to, if the entire point of my resolution is to try and get more people to adopt it and to realize the benefits of it, price is the weakest argument I have.
Mm-hmm. Now, for those people like myself and maybe even you who do care a little bit about the price, and that's the part of the interest and what's important, believing in the technology and trusting in the blockchain and loving Bitcoin, apart from the price, makes it easier to stomach days like today when the price is down big time. But Bitcoin is not going anywhere, so things will bounce back. It's about more than the day-to-day ups and downs in the market.
Absolutely.
And to that end, before we move on, to reference an article on the Merkle, which I will try to find and cite by the end of the show because I don't remember the title offhand. It was not written by you. It was written by another writer about, I believe it was top 5 worst advices in worst pieces of advices, to use standard English, in cryptocurrency. One of them was the bad advice was don't fall in love with your holdings.
Yeah.
And the response is, hell yeah, you should love your holdings because that helps you stomach days like today. And that's why you should hold it in the first place. Because you think it's a worthwhile coin or token or technology. I mean, if you love it, other people are going to love it, and that's going to send the price up and keep it popular, right?
Absolutely.
So, appreciate you telling us about your resolution. I wanted to ask you about speaking of Bitcoin and blockchains generally, you talked about some of the great things about it, but there's some potential flaws. There's some weaknesses potentially that in the last week alone, the Merkle has covered a couple people. One of them was Edward Snowden. He talked about the fact that certainly Bitcoin and so many, if not almost all, of the cryptocurrencies out there have public ledgers. And of course, Edward Snowden, whistleblower, big supporter of privacy. He is saying you cannot have a lifelong history of everyone's purchases and interactions be available to everyone and have that work out at scale. He personally is a big fan of Zcash, but clearly there are a couple privacy-oriented currencies, but Bitcoin certainly not private and anonymous. So that's one issue that people have with Bitcoin. And then also we heard recently about Jed McCaleb, who ironically is the co-founder of Ripple, but he sort of bashed Ripple as being very centralized. He pointed out that the Ripple team itself runs the majority of those nodes. And I was just reading that in the case of Bitcoin, something like a third of the current hash power of Bitcoin is associated with Bitmain and their ASIC miners. So clearly there's a lot of centralization affecting Bitcoin and Ripple and perhaps most of the big cryptos. So that's another issue. So between the lack of privacy and the lack of decentralization, some people are very concerned. Are you concerned about one or both of those issues?
So yes, while I adore the technology, I also recognize that it is 10 years old. Um, and the improvements that have come with it may have felt sluggish, but I do have to remind myself that we're only a decade in. That said, also recognizing that a lot of the data on a blockchain itself is one way hashed. I do understand that you can associate wallets with identifying information. If say like I'm sure that my new egg purchases from the wallets that I used to purchase that, those have my name, address, those things associated with those now, easily, not too hard to do. Um, but I think that while these are definitely things to consider, I don't think that they're damning. I think that these are important things to look at. These are massively. I mean, whenever there's a red flag, there's always a chance to fix it. I don't think they break the system. I think that these issues just show us where we need to focus attention next. And so, figuring out some sort of privacy mechanism on a large blockchain like Bitcoin would be, one way of doing that. I think another way is I'm also a pretty big proponent of using, multiple cryptocurrencies for various use cases. So if there was something that I would prefer to have a bit more private, like something if I was
doing something that you don't need to be specific, Dariush.
Yeah,
something that you
sure,
want
but
to keep private. People will be okay with it.
Yeah, no one needs to know if I go see a movie every 2 weeks or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I'm not too bothered if anyone does.
It was pretty innocuous. I thought you were going to come up with something a little more risque than sing a movie. You're saying you don't care about that. I understand. That's what can go on a legend.
I'm a pretty boring person. I won't lie to you.
Really?
Oh yeah.
You seem to go to a lot of parties, judging from some of your diary entries in the resolution. You have a lot more friends than I do.
Well, comes with the industry. Sometimes you end up at various conferences. I try and go to conferences and meetups a lot, just because I think that those are good places to. I mean, this is a bit off topic really quickly, but the reason why I know some various amount of people or an okay amount of people, I guess, is because I do try and go to a bunch of meetups, not just crypto stuff, but just other things that interest me, because I really enjoy trying to have those conversations and learn from others who are interested in the same things as me. Because I think that discussion and having open conversations is probably one of the most beautiful things about being human and alive. So that's why I do that. But so let's say that I want to go see like a movie every 2 weeks. I realize that not everyone needs to know that, and I would appreciate an advertising company not being able to see that, because then I'm suddenly probably going to get a lot of advertisements for upcoming movies. I do already, but perhaps even more so if they can figure out what movies I was watching or whatever. But I think that I can use a different chain for that then, as long as those tokens or those cryptocurrencies are accepted by the merchant I'm transacting with. And in those cases, I would elect to use those. I think that there is a lot of value in a public-facing blockchain, though, especially for regulation and making sure that the ledgers with companies and banks, even their dealings, are all on the level, because I am fairly skeptical of what banks do behind closed doors.
Let's put the government's transactions up on that public blockchain while we're at it.
Completely fine with that, because I think that it's very important for a taxpayer to be able to see where their money is being spent and what it's going to. And exactly, so there are going to be use cases where you absolutely want a wholly public blockchain, and then there might be some others where, for personal, day-to-day transactions, where you may not want that. And I think that probably the best workaround for now would be just kind of voicing your using your voice and letting the merchants that you want to transact with search or look into adding those payment methods. And then, sorry, so the first was privacy. What was the second?
The other one was centralization and the fact that Bitcoin and Ripple and various currencies, it's not like you can go onto your laptop and mine these coins like you could back in the early days, which I'm sad about.
Yeah, well, I mean, garlic coin you could mine for a little bit there. I think that difficulty's gone up again already, though. That was a fun post. But so,
wait, which post?
Garlic coin. I did a what is garlic coin? Essentially, this there's an individual on Reddit who said that if his post got voted by like 30,000, he would. I think he forked it off of Litecoin or something. He essentially just forked.
Oh yes, so yeah. It's a joke coin. It's a fake coin.
It's another joke coin, which is near and dear to my heart. I love those, frankly. But so yeah, so mining is and the centralization around mining is a bit of an issue, and I'll freely admit that. However, I don't know that there is a good solution yet. And I kind of feel like Marx and Engels whenever I'm like, oh yeah, mining centralization is a bit of a problem. Calling out the issue and making some good arguments about the issue, but not offering a really good solution. And I think it'll take time to find that. I think that I think there is value in making it an expensive, both computationally and resource-intensive thing to do, because securing the blockchain, then is, it makes it really, the economic incentive to perform a 51% attack is just all but gone. If you are, if it costs so much to mine a block and to outcompete every other miner. But of course, the issue is, as you're saying, if you have a group or a pool controlling 33% of the hash power of a network, it's, while hard, it's not nearly as hard for them to find that extra, what is it, 18%? It would be harder for me to find the necessary 51%. But yeah, I don't know that I have a good answer. I realize that it's an issue, and I think we should all be talking about it a lot more, in a very civil manner, because unfortunately these things can devolve into a lot of name calling and mudslinging very quickly, unfortunately.
I agree, but it's pretty cool when someone who, and I don't know the full backstory, but I mean, this guy co-founded Ripple, and he's okay with criticizing it when he
and I think that it's absolutely important that that you criticize the things that you love, even, in my opinion, because if you truly want something to succeed, you need to be critical of it. You need to be very honest about the issues and flaws it has, and you need to, in the case of cryptocurrency, come up with a decentralized solution, or propose your solution and convince others of it. So I'm happy that other people are talking about it, and I would love to see people talking about it more.
So, hey, speaking of mining, I would love to hear you made reference to something, and I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this. So, if you don't want to get into it now, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But I was very excited. A few weeks ago, you wrote that you had come up with a super succinct and potent way to describe something. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yes, I do, and I actually I am embarrassed that it is still sitting in my drafts on my computer.
Oh, so you wrote this thing. You just haven't posted it.
I'm not happy with it yet, unfortunately. But
well, I'm wondering if you would like to go into it at all here on the show. Give people a sneak peek.
A little bit.
Great.
So a colleague of mine, she recently gave a talk to some master's students at Georgetown University, and her and I were trying to come up with a way to think about, how to explain to a bunch of MBA students what in the heck mining is. and do it in such a way where it's not just a slide up on a screen. Because I've been in those rooms before, where I've been over my head and someone's trying to explain something to me, and the best they can do is put a screen up, and I'm just like, this is just useless. So the way that she came up with describing how proof of work would look in this situation was great. She essentially took the students and put them into, unfortunately, a very centralized sort of mining thing. There were three groups. There were, four groups. There were three groups of miners, and then there was one, but there should have been more, but one group of essentially like nodes, note takers, like ledger keepers. And to be able to write something to the ledger, the note keepers, the miners all had to try and clap as fast as they could to 10 quickly between themselves. And this is not only a really good way of describing how to discover a nonce, because it is just an incremental 1, does this work? No. 2, does this work? No. 3, does this work? No. And it's just +1 until you discover the nonce that fits the block and solves the target hash. So it was a bunch of clapping, which I assume just devolved into absolute chaos in that room. But it was really helpful for the students, I was told, because they were physically doing something, showing that they had to put in some type of work to be able to write their data to the chain, and then receive, I'm not entirely sure what she was giving them, but there was some sort of reward involved, something desirable, candy, something, I don't know, maybe Dogecoin. But the augmentation, the way that I wanted to kind of change that is, from what she described, she just kept having them do the clap to 10. But I also wanted to show how the target difficulty goes up. So I wanted them to eventually start having to clap more and more and more. And so the reason why this is hard to get into an article format and why it's still sitting in my drafts on my computer is just because it is a very physical exercise. But that's the long and the short of it. It was something that she came up with, and I have to credit her for that, because it was it was not my original idea, but it was definitely something that I thought was helpful in teaching those students. And I've used it with a few friends out at that bar last weekend, actually, where I was talking to the guy who hated Monopoly and cryptocurrency, and also to...
Oh yeah, that's the other crazy thing, is you bought him a drink afterward, right?
Yeah, I bought him a drink.
I would have thrown my drink in his face after telling me that I was invested in scam coins.
It is what it is. I mean,
no, you're a great guy. I'm not surprised, but that's cool. But anyway, this analogy that you've taken on, I think it's awesome. And the thing about the clapping seems like a really bizarre thing that has no point. Just as some people point to Bitcoin and say these mathematical computations that go into mining seem like a waste and like they have no point. And this is such a carbon footprint that mining has. But there's good reason for these seemingly nonsensical activities, isn't there?
Yeah, I think that, to make it even a bit more extreme, it might, if you have like a gym or something, especially if you're like trying to teach younger children about like blockchain, or like high school kids about blockchain, you could have them like run around the gym once or twice. And the first one to do that would, I don't know, where it's just something where, because there's something to be said about connecting the idea to a physical sensation. So, if you're getting tired after running around a gym 3 times or whatever, that might be like, oh, wow. So it's not just like magic internet money. There's a ton of effort going into this.
That's cool. So speaking of mining and the mining fees and mining block times, these are all issues that come up when it comes to Bitcoin, and even Dogecoin, your favorite coin, still takes about a millisecond to confirm transactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's this new coin on the block. Well, it's not new, but it's new to a lot of people's attention because recently rebranded. It was known as Ryblox. Now it's Nano. It's been around for about a year. And Nano promises no fees and instant transactions. So we were just chatting about this the other day, and I think you haven't looked a ton into Nano, but you're skeptical about the concept of a coin having instant transactions for no fees. Why are you so skeptical?
I am
Or why are
skeptical.
you a little skeptical?
Uh, so I'm a little skeptical. Just one because, and I do want to preface this by saying that I haven't researched them enough to have a real opinion about this. So everything that's spewing forth from me now, it should be taken with that grain of salt, is what I mean to
Well,
say.
your fake opinions are better than most people's real opinions, Dariusz, so spew away.
Well, that's entirely too kind.
You're right,
So
it is a little too kind. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, it's fine. So the only reason why am skeptical about it, and it's a bad reason, frankly, is because I haven't seen it done yet.
Hmm.
I haven't seen it, um, and so that's a bad reason, I realize. But you see, even large, well-scaled financial systems like Visa or Mastercard, where they're doing 33,000 transactions a second or whatever. Those are highly centralized and whatnot. But even those, while we don't see them, are taking a ton of time. Um, it may feel instant to a lot of us using it, but you realize that it takes what 2 to 3 business days to post a transaction, and then when you pay it off, it takes another 2 to 3 days for the ACH to clear between your bank account and that. So there are these large swaths of time that just are there for data reconciliation. But the other thing that a lot of people seem to forget about is that while it feels like there's no fee involved with using a credit card or something like this, there's massive fee implications on the merchant's end. So I have yet to see a system that can both promise these near instant transactions or instant transactions, and then also say there will be no fee involved. Because while running a proof of stake rig might be negligible as far as costs, those costs are being eaten somewhere. And even if it's only pennies a month or whatever being run by some guy in Siberia with his 3 Raspberry Pi 3s, running a small 3-node cluster for staking, those there's effort still, and I think that those efforts should be compensated somehow. And I could very well just be missing something obvious about Nano in how they're compensating those who are validating the network. But work or staking should definitely, processing a transaction, in my opinion, should have some cost associated with it.
All right, well, I'm sure that there's some huge fans out there of Nano that are listening to this that are going to post really obscene, awful comments in response to your response. And I'm sure that there's some that are going to post very articulate, kind responses. And those are the ones that we'll look into and throw your way, Dariusz, next time we talk on the
Absolutely.
subject. And maybe we'll both have learned a little more about this particular coin at that point, and maybe we can even have one of these people on the show.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
have a more interactive conversation. Anyway, I want to circle back, as they say, and reference that article from just a few weeks ago that I referenced. It was by Zane Huffman, who's one of our other real prolific writers. He's new to the Merkle team, and the title of that article was "Top 4 Pieces of Bad Advice in Cryptocurrency." And bad advice number 4, actually, it was bad advice number 3, was don't fall in love with your holdings, which is the one that we brought up earlier. And number 2 is one that we referenced also, and that was buy this coin because it's better than Bitcoin. And he writes, the fact of the matter, I think you agree, he says, the fact of the matter is that almost every single newly created currency is better than Bitcoin. It either forks the original code base to facilitate faster transactions, better distribution, or greater scalability, or implements new features that Bitcoin does not offer. A coin that is better than Bitcoin certainly does not automatically deserve to be someday worth as much as Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin's the first, so it's not going to be the latest and greatest. That was
Yeah,
my point. The last thing I said. Everything else was Zane's work. Copyright 2017. The Merkle.
yeah, and that was very well articulated on his end. I I think there's a lot of value in being first to market. I mean, you can't say cryptocurrency or blockchain in the same breath without at least thinking about Bitcoin. It's the granddaddy of them all. Um,
Yeah, but see what I'm thinking is that Bitcoin, it's more of the granddaddy when it comes to store of value. Presumably it can't be hacked, and when it comes to being a medium of exchange, if there are coins that have free transactions or instant transactions, or even close to free and close to instant, more so than Bitcoin, maybe Bitcoin becomes the granddaddy as a store of value and like one of several uncles in a big family when it comes to uh, being used as a medium of exchange. Is that heresy to you, or you kind of were alluding to that, right? Multiple currencies for multiple use cases. You'd be okay with Bitcoin as one of many.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself part of the maximalist camps. Um, I think that a lot of these coins have a lot of value. I think that I mean, there are obviously some that uh, are have more worth and merit than others. Um, and I don't know that Bitcoin would be overtaken ever, because I don't know necessarily that that's, if we're asking, or if the answer is Bitcoin is either going to be top dog or something else is going to be top dog, then we're asking the wrong questions, in my opinion. I think that it's far more productive to think about how these various cryptocurrencies, these various blockchain networks, these various coins can serve us in different ways. And frankly, I wouldn't want to live in a world where there's only one type of currency, or one type of way to secure value, or to secure data. Because I think that kind of competition between chains is the driver of innovation, like any other market. Um, if your complacency, just breeds boring and unusable products, I think. So I think that I, I enjoy the idea of these coins, while not necessarily competing against each other, but competing in parallel to each other, to be the best part for their use cases possible. And those use cases can evolve over time. I'm not saying that they can't. Bitcoin certainly has. Um, but I think that just looking for the one coin to rule them all, or something to that effect, might just be the wrong search, in my opinion.
Now, in the time that we have left, a couple things I want to bring to your attention. One of the things that I am most interested in when it comes to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is the man, or maybe the woman, or the group of people, or the robot. We have no idea who started this all. I mean, not only did Satoshi Nakamoto come up with Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto came up with blockchain. A lot of people don't realize no one was talking about blockchain before 2008, and this
Mhm.
white paper came out. So, I mean, you talked about granddaddies. He's like Adam. He's like God, as far as I'm concerned. I really want to know more about this person. Of course, they have chosen to be synonymous, and we respect that. But it's still very interesting to me to think about and maybe to figure out who this person was. And I think you disagree with me on this. You've written that a bit on the subject, but you think you've said that it's not interesting and or important, and not only you, other people in the blockchain industry that I respect, and of including Andreas Antonopoulos, have talked about how Satoshi Nakamoto, it's really not that important who it is, or even that interesting. So I want to hear from you. Why is that?
So this answer is fairly it's heavily informed by Andreas and the others in the industry that you just cited, and very much so by how I interacted with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies at my when I first started learning about them. There's something great about being able to look at code and saying, yes, this works, or yes, this doesn't, and nothing else matters. And that's what's interesting about crypto to me. And I think Satoshi actually agreed with this. There was a lot of Satoshi's posts would reference, like, look at the code. It doesn't matter who I am. Does this work? And if you don't think it works, then go somewhere else or try and fix it. So it was this sort of, it's merit based, and that's why I think it's more, the code is more important, and the technology that underpins it is more important, and the fact that it works is more important than who this person was. While it's definitely an interesting and intriguing line of thought, I don't think it should or does have any bearing on the future adoption or development of Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrencies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, clearly it wouldn't affect the future roadmap of Bitcoin. But for me, for instance, you brought up something profound that was said by Plato and Socrates, right? Mm-hmm. Are you interested in knowing their names? I mean, what if I told you what they said but didn't tell you who said it? Isn't there something to be said about, okay, this person lived, and even something else that we brought up earlier was the financial meltdown, the fact that Satoshi Nakamoto was obviously alive at the time of the bailouts, and we talk about code, he or she or whoever embedded that line about the bailout into the code. But I'd like to know whether they were libertarian or cypherpunk or whatnot, because it's all about history, I mean, I am very interested.
And again, I'm not saying that I'm not interested. I'm just saying that I don't know that it necessarily matters. I'm interested in a lot of things that don't matter.
Like what? What else?
I don't know, like my hobbies, chess, for one. Like, that doesn't matter at all. But I love playing chess, and I'm very
play chess? Are you a competitive player? Are you in tournaments and stuff?
No, I'm not that good. But so I'll read about I'll read the old masters' theories and things like that. But I don't know. I'm less.
So for you, blockchain and Bitcoin matters. So you're focused on the meat of the matter rather than the people and the context.
And so I think the other bit of aversion I have to it is that I know that a lot of people, if they found out that, let's say that Satoshi was a libertarian, I know some people who would just immediately turn on the idea of blockchain because it came from a libertarian.
Interesting.
Or if they found out that Satoshi was a communist or a socialist or something like that, they'd be like, oh God, no, I can't believe that I would even agree or use the system, this person who I have such foundational and fundamental disagreements with. I can't believe that I would even consider using their system. And so I would legitimately worry about that. And I also don't want to see a situation where we're deifying someone especially with a technology that is meant to free us, really, more than anything else. This is, it's a Greek illusion here, would be, Satoshi would be like the Prometheus that never gave us a name. And fire in that instance was what was important, not Prometheus, how he got the fire or what his punishment was.
All right, Dariusz. That's incredible how you managed to put 3 Greek references into one podcast about blockchain. I really admire your academic, your learnedness. That's impressive.
I like antiquity.
Clearly, but moving forward and thinking about the blockchain industry, one thing I wanted to ask you, having worked in the blockchain industry in America, is maybe what America can learn from other countries and about industry and government regulation of said industry elsewhere. And the backstory here is I was unbelievably lucky and honored to connect with a gentleman in Japan recently by the name of Minayuki Fukuda. He is a former member of parliament. He headed up the IT committee there, and he was actually instrumental in crafting the Japanese government's policy toward Bitcoin and blockchain. And it's actually a very hands-off policy. He encouraged the formation of essentially a chamber of commerce composed of these blockchain companies, and a lot of the regulation, self-regulation, came from there. As you know, there's not a lot of regulations, and Bitcoin is very certainly legal, and it's thriving in Japan more so than just about anywhere else. So I was very interested to ask this fellow what he felt America could learn from Japan in regards to promoting Bitcoin and blockchain. And what he told me was he actually toured the U.S. I believe it was in 2014. He wanted to answer the same question and learn about what was going down in America. So he did this tour, and he actually he crowdfunded his tour online through crypto. He was raising money through Bitcoin to make this tour, which I thought was pretty awesome. But he went to, I believe Kraken was on the list. He went to several different companies in the blockchain industry and asked, "Hey, what sort of support do you get from the American, government, from your government? How do you feel that you are treated? Are you getting support?" And he said across the board, he heard the same thing from every company. They said no. In contrast, we are like getting regulations and getting rules and getting punishments, and we're getting like the opposite of support. So he said that was one thing that perhaps we could learn. There's certainly not a lot of that happening, although things are changing somewhat with some of the shenanigans with some of the exchanges since the coin check hack. But generally speaking, they support blockchain, the government does over there, whereas in America, in his opinion, not so much. So long question, Dariusz. What I wanted you to tell me is that your take, having worked in this industry yourself? And if so, how the heck can we as citizens, a lot of our listeners are Americans, how do we change that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good question. So while regulation is coming down the pipeline, a lot of it is reactionary, is what's going on, I think. That said, I do believe that the United States is not in such a position where it's like not able to be fixed, or like where everything is getting clamped down in such a way where we have to really begin to worry. There's no like sweeping ban or anything like that. I don't even know how you would ban crypto, but there's no attempt to have a sweeping ban or anything. And there's actually a very what's the term? Active and strong community, working on helping drive policy to be more blockchain friendly, in both the private sector, the public sector, and in Congress itself. We have the Congressional Blockchain Caucus, which has quite a few members on it. Like Jared Polis, Tony Cardenas, excuse me. These Congress men and women who are part of this caucus, who are helping drive not only awareness but also policy. Because I don't know if you had the fortune to actually watch any of the SEC hearings or the congressional committee hearings on the blockchain and cryptocurrency space recently, but there was one thing that was very apparent, was that the vast majority of the people asking these questions and demanding answers from those in the industry had just very little knowledge about what was going on itself, actually. Or if they did have a better knowledge, then the language they used betrayed that.
And truth be told, in Japan, my understanding is it's very much the same thing. It's not as if the government is filled with blockchain and Bitcoin aficionados. In fact, this former MP I ran into was one of the few, and he's often referred to as the biggest Bitcoin supporter. And maybe that's all we need is one or two. I mean, we don't even have one or two people in Congress yet that are known as being gung-ho, super high on crypto, right?
Well, so I mean that Congressional Blockchain Caucus, I think most of these are junior members. of Congress, so maybe they don't have as much pull. But there's a good 10 people on that caucus who are really working on it. It just unfortunately, kind of the nature of our legislative branch is that it's slow to move sometimes. But there are also private public hybrid thing. Like there is a chamber of digital commerce in the United States as well that really is the blockchain advocate between policy and business, essentially. And they have some pretty heavy hitters on their committee. So like TD American, or like TD Bank, Accenture, BitGo, just to name a few. So we're there. We're working on it, and I don't think that we need to think that it's all over, or that all these other countries are going to outpace us. I think that with perhaps a little bit of a poke in the ribs from constituents, we can definitely get these congressmen and women to listen a bit more about blockchain and explore its possibilities. I know on the state level, there are a lot of groups that are exploring and initiatives exploring blockchain, like my home state of Illinois, which is not known for being terribly efficient or I mean, like 3 of our last 5 governors are sitting in jail right now. Like, so we're a pretty corrupt state. But there's even
talk about the need for transparency, right?
Exactly. But there's even here in Illinois, we have the Illinois Blockchain Initiative, and further another group called the Chicago Blockchain Center, which are really trying to drive awareness and help communities get the tools they need to be more learned about this, be more articulate about this, and then foster a really healthy what's the term environment to grow these businesses. So while we may not be where Japan is, I am ridiculously hopeful.
That's awesome, man. I'm more hopeful having heard that, and I hope that you write more about some of these Congress people who are knowledgeable and interested in developing the blockchain industry. I feel like a lot of readers, myself, other people in this community, often it's easy to walk away from politics and be apathetic and think nothing happens. They're all corrupt. But some of these people, maybe some of our readers would be up to get behind them and contribute or volunteer, or at least read up about them and know who they are. I was certainly, intrigued to learn about this fellow in Japan, and if people like him exist in the U.S. that are into this stuff as much as we are, then we need to support them 100%. Now, before I let you go, Dariusz, speaking of citizen action, politics, what can we do about net neutrality at this point? You haven't written about it in a few months. You're probably still depressed. I know I am. Most of our readers are. Yeah. Since Merkle has written a bit on VPNs, also networks like Substratum. I think Vitalik Buterin actually made reference to mesh networks as possibly being the answer in regards to net neutrality, if and when these companies start throttling their customers who don't shell out for the premium services. Do you have any desire to even think about this anymore, or are you still sick to your stomach?
So I'm disappointed. I'm really it was a big defeat for American citizens when the FCC had that ruling. I know that a few of my articles leading up to it became increasingly firebrand, and then an immediate deflation of that upon the ruling.
I think you swore. You used an obscenity for the first time ever on the Merkle.
Yeah, I don't.
In the context of one of these stories, that was interesting.
Yeah, I don't generally swear too much when I write, But yeah, it was really disappointing. It really bothered me, and it gets me fired up still.
So where do we go from here, man?
I have been I'm a big proponent of getting in touch with your Congress men and women on both the senatorial level, the representative level, and then even down to state and local governments. Because there's one of the things that probably could happen here is if we can't fight it at a federal level, there may be a chance that you can work at a lower constituency level. I know that I think California and a few other states have started to work on data protection laws and other throttle protection laws. I'm not entirely sure how fruitful those have been, and I would love to look into them more. I actually should. But so that's one option. The other option is just to be loud and annoying to your Congress people. They, I mean, that is what
you alone have probably called them a few dozen times, right?
Oh, absolutely. Emails, letters, calls. I mean, you put them there, and then they work for you. So you can't let them forget that.
Any chance that you run for office someday, Dariusz?
Probably not. I can't imagine that I'd want to die that young. I would just be too stressed out.
Yeah, but I mean, well, okay. I could see myself doing it at some point. I mean,
and it takes a much stronger person than myself to do it. So I could definitely see. Yeah, I encourage it. All the people who have great ideas in my life who I think could handle it, and you're one of them, definitely go for it. Why not?
I don't think it's as stressful as you make it out to be. I mean, especially in the legislature, just sit and vote and take phone calls from people like you. It doesn't. I don't think. I think you would die young if I were the president,
That's a fair point.
or maybe a governor.
Yeah.
Of Illinois. But I don't know. I think one or both of us, actually no, both of us should run for office next year, and that'll be our joint New Year's resolution. We'll both write about this for the Merkle, and maybe we'll run against each other, so one of us will win, and the other one will get voted off or something.
Well, we'd have to unfortunately kiss the ring of one or both parties to get their war chest, I think. So.
All right, this broadcast is rapidly going off the rails, so we're going to end it here. Dariusz, I want to thank you for being part of it. I want to thank our listeners. If you're listening after the broadcast has ended, no worries. It is not too late to comment, ask questions. We will bring them up on future editions of the MerkleCast. So once again, thanks for listening. Dariusz, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you for everyone who listened.